Welcome back, and we are moving into our second segment for today. And for those of you who are looking to perhaps make some tweaks and changes in your life for 2017, it could be time management overall or making time for brand new hobbies. And so this is a very important issue to discuss before these types of changes. We have with us to be able to share her expertise in this area, Program Officer for the University of West Indies, Dr. Sharymayne Saunders.
Good
morning and welcome.
Good morning, Miss Annie. Good morning.
Time management is one of those topics that most people find interesting. However, most people, how would I say, suffer in a sense from not being able to manage their time effectively, both on a personal level and a professional level. We hear about time management, but we often wonder, how best can I be able to actually plan my time and use my time effectively? Where do we begin from?
Well, one of the things I tell people all the time is that time is not static. And the things that you have to remember is that no matter what we do, there's 60 minutes in an hour, 24 hours in a day. Most of us work 8 hours per day. That's a standard. And we want to be productive within that 8 hours. So we have to realize that prioritization is important. I see time management just as we would do budget management. And probably that's one of the things that people cannot relate to, because you don't necessarily find that people budget their money. And so it's even more challenging for them to budget their time. But if you allow yourself to look at it as with the similarity of budgeting time and money, you know what salary you'll get for the month. And you also know the bills you have to pay, what you need to pay. And the same with time. We have tasks, and we need to realize that we have to allocate a certain amount of time for the task, reasonable time. Because if you tend to, we fall into this trap of not saying no to people, and we take on all these things we can't do, nothing will change, because it's not going to change the fact that there's only 60 minutes in an hour. It's not going to change the fact that there's only 60 seconds in a minute. We still only have that amount of time. And so we now have technology, and with technology we find that we want to surf the net, we want to look at Facebook, and I call these interruptions. For some of us, they're welcome interruptions, even the texting. But for others, it's unwelcome interruptions, and we now have to find time to manage interruptions. It's not even to talk about minimization of interruptions, because we can't really minimize them.
I love that you mentioned the text message and all these things, because I think obviously Facebook is an easy one for people to recognize. Spend less time on social media, you have more time for yourself. But a text message, for example, in the middle of doing something, disrupts you for 5-10 minutes in response time from completing what you were doing. Let's talk about ways that we can begin the process of assessment as to how we spend our time. You know, you get home at the end of the day, maybe you have 5 things that you didn't get to tackle that you wanted to do, and you say, where did the time go? So how do we start to look at it in general?
What I do with my time, the first thing I try to identify how I will do proactive tasks and reactive tasks. So reactive tasks are those tasks that you have to respond to. For example, the intrusive text, maybe it's work related. For me, I get students send us texts, and that's a method of communication. So I can't call that really intrusive, but it's reactive. I don't plan on those. But then I have proactive tasks that I can plan on. For example, you already know you have 1 hour, 1 hour and a half for the show. Those are proactive tasks. So you can schedule out, and I say it's like a pie. You have a pie and you share your time. What you do with your time is the things that you value. So you could schedule times for your proactive tasks by identifying those and then prioritizing them. So you'll say the things that you have to do, and most of the times the proactive tasks are the ones that you already know what time those will fall into.
Now, Dr. Saunders, effective time management seems, and organization, seems to be one of those disciplines that we were never really taught.
No.
You either learn
Yeah.
to self-discipline when it comes to managing your time, or you don't have it. Like you just,
Yeah. Some say it's a personality.
things just remain fluid.
Yeah.
It's a skill actually, and I teach it. Well, I do facilitation of workshops for companies because you realize with all the technology that exists that people need it. It's a skill, because when we think about organization, that's a specific skill that you have. You organize. Some people, you walk into their office and their desk has a lot of clutter, and you think they're disorganized, but they're not. They know how
There's
to.
a method in the
Madness.
madness.
So, but then time management is really the activities that are linked. So one is a set of skills and they're specific. So as you go along, you learn to use, for example, you're in the bank, the line is long. That's out of your control. But you can, well, for me, I would be able to I send emails, I respond to emails while in the bank, I'm using the time, even though I have aspects that are out of my control, I'm effectively using my time, so I have productivity. Because we find that a lot of people will be working and they do 8 hours, but at the end of the day, they say to you, I don't feel like I was productive today. Right? They haven't truly manifested the efficiency of their time.
Sitting in an office for 8 hours doesn't mean that
You're
you have been
productive.
productive.
No.
And there are also peak hours, I know, in time management planning. We have to be honest with ourselves.
Yes.
And I think we know when we work best and when we are a bit slower. I don't know what you call it or what's the scientific.
I use the term for that. But I primarily would use that for personal management. And I say, when it is your peak time. For example, I am an early morning person, but I have friends who they can work all through the night. For me, I get up really early and I'm really productive, and I know my productivity time. During the hours of 6 to about 10, I'm the most productive person.
That's when you can jam.
Yes. So, and then my work, the thing about it is my work allows a lot of flexibility because we're a regional university, and then 6 o'clock for me may be 7, 8 for the other sites, the other campuses. So a lot of companies we're seeing now utilizing that, because you have to identify when is your most productive time, when is I call it your prime time. And once you know that, you can optimize. Now, not a lot of us don't have jobs that have that flexibility. And you notice, like in the creative world, like advertising and stuff, they're mastering this because they recognize that you come to work for 8 hours, we pay you for 8 hours, but
that
you
doesn't
truly
mean
optimize.
You will generate your best ideas at 8 o'clock when you would drag yourself out of bed.
when you look at it, I think on an individual basis, you have people, as you rightfully mentioned, who are more productive at certain times of day.
Absolutely.
Particularly when you're dealing with creatives. Some people generate their best ideas, for instance, right before they go to bed. They may be laying down in bed and eureka, something pops up. And if they're able to quickly get to a computer and jot those ideas down, then it's just for them to be able to submit in the morning.
Absolutely.
But you can't put a finite time to that. You can't say, okay, this has to be done in terms of the thought process between 8 and 5.
Well, we don't live in the progressive society where
some
these
of those
things,
they recognize that your optimum time is a time that because you know yourself best and you know when you work best, like I say, in the early morning is my time. And I've always heard Belizeans, when I do workshops, people say the hardest time for me to function is after a big lunch. That's my lull time, So then you want to center your activities that gets the body moving, motion, because then you already know that's your siesta time.
How do you counter that when there may very well be a demand from management or from employers that after you have a lunch, for instance, it's time for you to get back to work and be productive, when they rightfully know that when they've had a big lunch, they themselves can't really focus immediately thereafter.
So when I do these workshops, I tell people, address those time, because remember now they're working within constraints of that 8 hour, 8 to 5. So I tell them to, when you do your priority list, you adjust time for the tasks that are that will keep you awake and alive. Some people, a cup of coffee gets them moving, you know. So you want to do tasks that are keeps you alert. For example, checking your emails, that might be a part of your task. And so because you know you're going to fall asleep, the emails or your research might be an opportune time to do that after lunch.
Or save some of the more enjoyable things.
The tasks that you will enjoy doing, you do it then. Because those persons are working within the constraints of time and they don't have the, I call it the luxury, as you said, it's not a progressive society. I mean, in other countries, you're able to do flex time, you can work and incorporate personal time and still be quite productive than our country where you
would be more productive. I mean, studies have shown that. I think but we are not there, and I think we have to recognize that for most people, they are confined to what their employers dictate in terms of working hours. So I want to go back to some of the things because it is a challenge for many. Not only I think we did the pie once where you look at how much time you spend at work, how much time you spend personally, and really plot out how you're spending your time. Now, this is one of the things I've learned from this exercise. We have a very poor, or maybe just me, but I find poor perception as to the amount of time something actually takes. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, one of the things we use is what we call smart goal setting.
Okay.
You make sure that your tasks are specific, they're measurable, so you know what percentage of the work you can do. I can't remember the A.
They're achievable.
Achievable. So you know what you can accomplish. Let's say, for example, you have a report and you know you're not going to do the entire report, but you want to make it measurable. So you say, I can do 25% of the report. I can do the introductory portion. Then you want it to be time bound. Look within the constraints of the time.
Give yourself a timeline.
And reasonable, right? So with all of that, you make sure that your task, when you go through your task, you see how well you can. You cannot say, for instance, I used to do programming, and it requires a lot of creativity, right? And you might have to be tweaking bugs and stuff like that. You still may want to estimate the time to say it will last you an hour or 2 hours, but you have to allow yourself some lead time as well.
So maybe say dedicate an hour to it and not say I'll fix 25
And additionally now, let's say for instance, with my administrative post at the university, I cannot truly budget for interruptions. For example, I'm very good with time management, but when I get to work and I have my little to-do list and I keep striking off, but when a student comes in, we're very student-centered and I can't say, you're interrupting my time. I have to incorporate that. But what I can do is to manage the time. So, you know, when the student comes in, they may want to share things outside the scope that you can help because they feel at ease. So you have to manage that time. And it's the same with phone calls. If you're doing customer service, you may say the standard practice is a 10-minute call and you get to the problem, but that's not necessarily what happens when the customer calls you. So it's how you manage.
Here's an interesting question that I have for you, Dr. Saunders. What is the measure of productivity? Going back to what you were saying earlier about sitting at your desk 8 hours a day at work and feeling as if though you've not really satisfied what you set out to do during the course of the day. However, it's arguable that a fair amount of work needs to get done. It has been invested. How does one then measure how productive their day has been?
It's not necessarily the investment of the time. It's the completion of the task, and like I said, you make it measurable. So you may know from the get-go that you're not going to be able to complete a report because you have a deadline, but you may have made progress on that report. So you know that that task has been completed. And that's why I tell people, establish tasks. I don't try to set more than 10 tasks. And tasks or activities, as some of us call it, are complete. Like, for instance, when you're done with this show, you've done 3 segments. But you're not, within that, let's say an hour and a half, you're not completed your entire task, but each segment is getting you closer to completion. So probably at 7:30 when I check with you, you've completed 2 segments already. So you're 50% of your entire activity, right? So it's the same way. You have to put it in a little bit of chunks and identify, and that determines your productivity. Because at the end of the day, some of us are saying, yes, we're at work for 8 hours, but how much of that time have you truly invested in activities that equate to productivity?
Yeah. Now, quite a few people are taking on, as we mentioned before, New Year's resolution, and one of them is to be able to spend more time with loved ones, or spend time going to the gym, or more alone time. In other words, already in this day that we feel we have no more time left, we want to carve out an extra space for ourselves, family, whatever it is. What are some of the tips that you can give people in terms of being able, one, to identify the time so that they can be able to proceed with whatever changes they want to make?
Creating routines is the simplest and most efficient way of accomplishing that. Because, like I say, and I'll repeat again, we can't change the fact that there's only 60 minutes in an hour. That is
fixed.
Static, right? But then time is not static in itself. I mean, these days I feel like an hour, I'm just sitting, but you know, I am there on Facebook, I don't realize that an hour passed. And then I look at myself, oh my goodness, I haven't gotten anything done, you know. So
or you're scrolling through news articles and an hour goes by.
So how do you do that? You work 8 to 12, 1 to 5, whatever. Your lunchtime is already allotted. And then when you get home, what do? Even though we don't have seasons, by the time you get home at 5:30, beating the traffic and everything, it's so dark already. You're in lull mode. How do you translate that? So we can utilize some of the same technology that we have. I mean, I know a lot of people have families all over. You use your FaceTime, you talk. But again, you have to allot time. You have to say, well, I'll be able to talk to John for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and incorporate some of our activities or things that we want to do. We can do it with our family members. For example, gym. Maybe you and your wife. I know a couple this morning. They said they're going to go ride. They ride, so they're going to go ride at 7:30 together. That's together time. And then of course you need your alone time. Right. I don't know. Some people are like, for myself, because I already know my time. As the minute I hit bed, I can't do anything else. I used to wait up and say I'll watch 10 o'clock news because I didn't catch it. But the TV is watching me. I'm already asleep. It's like the minute I set my head on the pillow, I'm out, you know.
Because you find as well that your body has a certain clock as well.
Of course.
And that clock, if I can surmise, is based on some form of conditioning. That when you see 10 o'clock, your body automatically starts shutting down.
That's why I say you create your routines. And my spouse is opposite from me. He's a dynamic. I'm a set. You know, I do budget every month. I have a little spreadsheet, and I do my time because I recognize that time is important. But I like the flexibility and the dynamism and the spontaneity that he has, because it lends that balance. Because I would be just setting my routine, and then the thing about being too much in the routine is that the minute things come out of the routine, you find yourself crazy. You know, it's like, oh my goodness, you just threw me off guard. You know, how do I manage if an emergency comes up, or you know? So there is also that balance.
So we've talked about quite a few things. One, know your prime time. I think that's very maximize
key.
It, right?
Yes, maximize productivity during that prime time.
So if you're at an 8 to 5, which, sorry, we can't change your 8 to 5, but what you can do is know when is the best time to get the most done.
Yes.
We talked about mapping out how much time is going where. We spoke about doing active things in your low, what did you call them? Your slow hours? Or,
Your lull time.
Your lull time, And what are some of the other tips? I find another issue being staying on time within the task itself.
So that's the other thing. So we are familiar with the CPT time. We Caribbean people say the Caribbean people time, and I say the Creole people time, coffee time. And we want to show up late. But we want to be able to leave early. And even at work, you work certain time, but I'll tell you, women, we need 15 minutes to go in the bathroom and freshen up our makeup before lunch, before we go home. So all this eats away at the already limited time that you have.
Yeah.
I tell people that there are cool tools that you can use, a lot of tools. For example, your Samsung phone has all these gadgets have all these timing
Alarms.
now with exercise, I don't I do karate, but it's a set time. But then I do the steps, and the little gadget, the little app tells you you've accomplished this in amount of time. I see people use the gadgets for water, tell them when to drink water and what time to drink water. So it's the equipment is there, the tools are there,
the resources are all
there, but what do you do with them?
Absolutely. I use alarms. Like makeup is one thing. You could spend half an hour to 45 minutes to an hour and a half on makeup, and in this job, that's part of my routine. But what I have to do is set an alarm so I can know how much time I'm spending doing this. And it could be anything else. If it's getting ready, making food, getting the kids ready, whatever. I find that one tool to be used. But in today's society, I think one of the things that we also hear is how much time you're spending on your phone around family members.
Like I say, you're in the bank, you have no control over the line, but you need to cash a check, you need to do banking transactions. When you go in, then use the time, even though you're on your phone, rather than surf the net, send some emails, answer emails.
So it's the efficiency part of it.
So you're really being productive on time, even if you ask for time off to go to the bank, because some of us don't have the luxury to just or you get an extended lunch, but you're still being effective and efficient, because your time now, the time in the line that you have no control over, is now being fully utilized and maximized for, you can go back to work and say, well, I responded to 15 emails, but I got my chore done and I got the work. So
it's so true.
Use the technology that is there to maximize the use of your time.
So you have had quite a bit of experience working with organizations and going in and finding out what some of the major challenges people have in terms of productivity. Tell us some of the things that you found very common in Belize that you would tell the wider public, pay attention to these.
Like just taking on things that you know you cannot do. Being afraid to say no, I can't, I
just don't have the time.
I don't have the time. And I say overextending yourself. And I'm not saying, sometimes we see the same people in the same circles. I'm one of those persons you see serving on this board, but I have mastered time management, so I can afford to do that. So it's not overextending, but I know my limits. So not because you call me to judge a pageant or to do this means, yes, I have the ability to do it, but I don't have to say yes because I don't have the time. And nobody's going to see you any differently if you say no.
And even if that time is your alone time and you don't want them to cut into it.
I tell people in the US when I studied, many times even when you go to the store, they give you a rain check. It's simply that. Take a rain check, It's not a part of our custom, but it's simply saying, look, I'm happy to do it. I'm thanking you for the opportunity, but to be totally honest, I can't do it at this time. Because then we overwhelm ourselves with tasks. Another thing is persons don't understand how to manage interruptions. We aim to minimize the interruptions, but we can't. Look, just now we heard the noise. You can't do anything about it. If a plane is flying over, you're talking, you have to
pause.
So what you want to do is to manage it. How you manage it, and so it's move away from trying to minimize your interruptions to managing those interruptions. That you have a control over.
And I love when you spoke about the proactive and reactive times.
Yes, and then you identify. And the proactive ones, we know what we'll have to do. And the reactive ones, we don't necessarily know because we don't know what's going to come.
We don't know what emails will come in.
We don't know if a customer will walk in with, with this whole lot of stuff that takes away from the proactive time, because that's what it does. But we do know that we can budget for it and allocate. And I tell people, managing time is just as managing or budgeting your money. And once you have a challenge in managing and budgeting your money, then you'll have a challenge doing that. And I know you have a segment after that focuses on financial management.
It's difficult when you're not able to get a handle of either of those two factors. But somehow, when it's a matter of something that is project-based, you try to make things work.
Yeah.
Even though you may not have mastered the idea of having a financial plan or scheduling a timeline for the work, you know that it needs to get done. And one way or the other, some of us are still able to pull it off with some degree of success.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At work, that's what we do. With the way we do with work, we now do it like projects because we feel that people are more effective. Yes, we cannot do the flex time that Europe and all these other countries are doing, but we do. And you're right. When you do project, you feel everybody knows what the end goals are, and that's in organization. When I do training, I start off with goal setting. We don't like goal setting in Belize. It's like a big bad word. You know, I want to lose 20 pounds. But goal setting tells you reasonably, you'll get to 20 pounds, but you're going to have to lose 5 first. And 5 doesn't mean you look at it and say the 5 pounds comes off me. It means I'll have to do X amount of activities.
And it doesn't mean 5 days at the gym.
So we end up in this because we are fearful of goal setting. And so I start off with small goal setting, little goals. And that's, you asked me earlier today if I do resolutions. I don't, because I am already in the practice of goal setting. So I'll tell myself, long-term goals will be in the next 3 years, I want to do this. There are small steps to get in there. And then you have your very short-term goals, you know, like I want to save, if I want to save $1,000, it doesn't mean I'll just take $1,000 out of my pay. I may need to do it $20 weekly. And then you can't say I'll save $20 weekly when you only get paid once a month. You know, so it's the thing about goal setting, and that's where
it has to be practical. It has to be realistic.
And I think for many people who are facing the MAGA season, one of the things they're saying is, I will not do that next Christmas. So
they keep saying
do something about it.
But before and again, because time is not waiting on us. By the time you blink, like I know I hear people already planning for Easter, because you're not, January is out, you're not going to save because you're trying to catch up by, say, you have financial aids right now, acquired income deficiency syndrome. And so you go through that period, and so January is out, but by April, the beginning of April is
you're rebounding fully.
You want your Easter body.
And then you spend it all on Easter too.
You don't have any savings. So realistically, you only have, if you're just going to start saving, you only have February and March to save. And if you only get pay twice.
The way I look at it, when I look at the calendar year, for instance, I look at what I term financial cycles within the calendar year. You mentioned, well, if we were to begin from December, January, which is the end and the beginning of a new year, you have the Christmas season. Then you have, for some, Valentine's. Then you have Easter, summer, September celebration. So you're looking at
all the cycles, so you already know.
Well, we're moving into finances, so let's go back to time for a second. And I mean, is there a key to success that you can share with people? Just if we could all tweak one thing and it will improve, or perhaps not tweak, but address or assess one thing.
For me, the truth of the matter is, you only have success if you've had failures. So you have to have at least made an attempt to do something. Didn't do it successfully for you to be successful. It's after you've failed at something, you've learned. They say hindsight is 20/20. Then you're truly successful because you have an opportunity to look back at it and say, well, what could I have done differently? What new things did I learn from that experience that now makes it possible for me to do it? That's when you truly have defined success. But we think that, a lot of us think that people who are successful have never failed, and that's not necessarily true.
Well, thank you very much. And of course, as you mentioned, you offer this as a service to companies.
Yes, we do. We do a time management. It's usually a 2-day, 3-day workshop filled with activities, skills, tips. It's fully And we do it at your site, or you can do it at the university as well.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for coming in.
Thanks for having
and
me.
sharing some very useful tips on how we can all manage our time a bit better to be more productive. Right? So we're going to go ahead and take a break, and when we come back, it'll be to talk about financial management for progress. So we'll take a break and be back in a few, so stay tuned.